Hello, you're watching James. My name's James, you're watching me, and I am talking about watches. Well, welcome to my part 2 video, to a video I made a little while ago. This one here, about the PT5000 movement. Well, I'm saying a part 2 video, but it's actually more of a follow-up video. Since making that one, I've had a few more thoughts about it. I've owned the PT5000 movement in a couple of my watches. I have a few more things I want to show you and a few more things I want to tell you. But it is a follow-up video, so it is absolutely worthwhile checking out this video first before continuing with this one here. Now, before we do jump into it, before I do start giving you some of this information, please, if you haven't done so already, I would absolutely love it if you just click on that subscribe button. Now, the PT5000 movement is based on the ETA 2824, which was put out around 1982, and it is one of the most recognizable movements out there in the watch world at the moment. It is a Swiss-made movement. It is put into a lot of different watches, a lot of well-known watches, a lot of sort of micro brands, and because it has been around for so long, this ETA movement, because it is so trusted and is such a good, reliable movement, it has been cloned on many occasions. The most well-known is the SEESTERN SW200, and obviously we're talking about the clone of it, the PT5000. But the PT5000 is not the first Chinese clone of the ETA movement. There is the Hangzhou caliber 6300, which has been around for longer than the PT5000, and there is also the SEAGULL ST2130. So there are other Chinese companies out there that are cloning this movement. So the PT5000 is another Chinese company that is cloning this movement. And having that SEAGULL and that Shenzhou movement out there already has shown and has given some history to Chinese movements cloning this ETA movement. So I think that gives us a little bit more confidence that this PT5000 should be okay. But this video is not so much more about giving further information other than what I've just said. It is more about a couple of experiments that I want to do. And to do that, I'm going to flip the camera around and I'm going to put 3 watches side by side. Firstly, I'm going to obviously have a watch with a PT5000, but I also have a watch with a ETA 2824 caliber inside of it, as well as a SEESTERN SW200. So I thought it'd be very interesting to put these 3 watches side by side and conduct 3 separate experiments utilizing these watches, sort of comparison and a few bits and pieces. But to do that, let's flip the camera around and let's check out these 3 watches. So today I have 3 watches here, one containing the ETA 2824, which is the sort of the papa bear of these movements. It's the original. We have a watch containing the SW200 by SEESTERN, which is a clone, and we have the watch containing the PT5000, which again is a Chinese clone of that ETA movement. And I've got 3 things I want to do today, 3 experiments with these watches, and I think it's going to be kind of interesting, especially the third one. Stick around for it, because I think I'm really interested in knowing what the answer is. I'm interested to see it, and I think you guys will be too. But firstly, let's have a bit of a look at the differences of the movements themselves, because in the back of here we have a display case back. That is the PT5000 in there. Inside my Escapement Time Type 2 Fleiger, you can see what she looks like just there. Inside the back of my Junkers Bauhaus, I have the ETA movement, and you get to see what it looks like there. Obviously the rotor is a different color, but let's have a look at the 2 side by side and see what they look like, because they should look very, very similar, because obviously one being the original, one being a clone, they should look the same. And as you look inside the insides of these watches, they do look very, very similar. So yes, they're saying it's a clone of the ETA. To me, visually, certainly looks like a clone of the ETA. But let's get on with these 3 experiments. Firstly, crown action and hand movement, because I've noticed something very specific about all 3 of these watches. They have a very similar, very unique crown action. Let's start with the ETA. This one does not have a screw down crown, so I can just start turning. Now listen to that. Can you hear that? It has a really interesting noise to it. Other watches that I have do not make that noise. And let's try the movement of the hands. Obviously having hacking, it's quite a slow movement. Not too slow, but it's a little bit slow as you move around. So how does that compare against the other 2 watches? Well, in my Steinart here, amazing watch, this one, I love this one. This one does have a screw down crown, so we've got to unscrew. But then when you actually start to manually wind, hear that? Yeah, so this is the SEESTERN SW200. Has that same sort of unique sort of feel. It's not a gritty feel, but you can sort of feel that movement. You can sort of, that sound, yeah, it's got quite a firm resistance. And what about moving their hands? Again, that same sort of feel. Not too slow, but not super quick either. So yep, I can definitely think and feel that that is going to be the same movement or the same type of movement inside. And what about the PT5000? Well, as you'd expect, you can expect the same thing. It has a screw down crown this escapement time. There's that noise again. It's not a bad noise, it's just unique to this movement, or perhaps it's probably not unique to this movement, but in my experience of movements, these ones just had that slight interesting sound. And movement of the hands, yeah, has that same sort of feel. So I can certainly say that from a look and a feel perspective, they all have a very similar sort of feel to them. So what's my next experiment? What do I want to do with these watches? Well, of course, I want to stick them on the time grapher and see how they differ. Now, the only difference we need to be aware of is this is a fairly new watch. This one's about a year old, and this is probably closer to 5 years old. So that's probably going to affect the results a little bit. However, I'm still interested to see what those results are on my time grapher. So here we have the ETA 2824. Yes, it's got a little bit of age to it. Mindful there, 50-degree lift angle, which is what suits this particular movement. It's a high beat movement, 28,800 vibrations per hour. Beat error is not too bad. Amplitude is good, -2 seconds. Not going to complain about that, especially since this watch movement is getting a little bit old. It's probably getting close to when it should be serviced. But overall, really does show you a good quality movement. Gives you some good figures on the time grapher. But let's compare that against the PYHLIDA SW200. So the movement inside this watch is about a year old. High beat, 28,800 vibrations per hour, which is exactly what we're expecting, obviously because it is a clone of this movement. Beat error, 0.2, perfectly fine. Amplitude, 243, perfectly fine. -8. So it's actually running a little bit worse than the ETA, even though it's a newer movement. Still though, a reasonable set of figures there. But how's that going to compare with the PT5000? So there's a pretty good set of figures. Not perfect, but pretty good. 28,800 vibrations per hour, as we would expect, being a clone. 0.1 beat error, perfectly good. Great amplitude, +10 seconds. Now, I'd love that to be closer to 0, but it's well within the specifications of this movement. So as you can see, they are all within that sort of ±10 seconds. Obviously all high beat movements, all have reasonable amplitude, all have minimum beat error, even though this one's getting a bit older, even though this one's a little bit old, even though this is a brand new watch. But let's get on to my most interesting experiment of all. So what's this last experiment? The one that's going to be the most interesting? Well, it's going to be the one that takes me the longest to film, but that's okay. For you guys, it'll be nice and quick. You can see they're all set perfectly for midnight or 12 o'clock, including the second hand. The idea being is I want to test the power reserves of these watches. ETA 2824, PYHLIDA SW200 and the PT5000. Now these movements do come with a listed 38 hours of power reserve, so that should get 38 hours. It'll be interesting to see what the other Swiss-made clone gets, and does the PT5000 going to have the same amount of power reserve? I'm interested to know, because I don't know. I've wound them all up to full manual power. Now I'm going to click the crowns in. I'm very interested to know whether they're all going to stop at around about the same time, or is there going to be significant differences? So let's click the crowns in, throw a touch more power in, and next step, we'll find out which one stops first. So push the crown in, push the crown in, push the crown in, a little bit more power. Let's get a little bit more power because I want this to be fully charged up. Next one, throw in a little bit more power. Screw it in because I just have to. I can't leave it unscrewed. PT5000, throw a bit more power in. Should be fully charged. Screw that in again. It's nice to have it nice and neat and tidy. So let's put that like that. Now, if these watches do move around a little bit in the next couple of shots, it's probably because I'm filming some other things as well. But I'm looking forward to seeing what the result is of this test. So I've ended up with some results that I was not expecting. Now, when I wound these watches up, I wound them up a lot. I really wanted them to be all fully charged. However, there is that possibility that even though I wound them a lot, they still weren't completely fully charged. So let's just keep that in mind. A little pinch of salt with this particular test. The ETA got to 28.5 hours before it stopped. The SEESTERN got to 29 3/4, 29:45 minutes basically before it stopped. And the PT5000, quite amazingly, got to 31.5 hours. So it actually won out of all of these three watches. Now, even if I didn't wind them all up properly, I was probably fairly consistent with how much I wound each watch, because I wound each one to when I felt like it was full. So perhaps it may not have been fully wound, but I'm fairly happy and fairly sure that they were consistently wound up. So to get the most amount of power reserve out of the PT5000 is actually pretty good. And it has actually confirmed for me a couple of things about the PT5000. I'm actually rather impressed by it. This is the second watch that I have with the PT5000. I've got another one on the way shortly. It is a good movement. I like it. I like the way it looks and feels. It looks nice through the see-through case backs. I like that high beat movement that it has. And I feel quite happy that it is going to run quite well and last quite a long time. To the point now that if I have the option of the Seiko NH35 movement or the PT5000, if the price is not a huge amount more, I'm probably going to pick the PT5000. Now, that's partly because I do already own a couple of watches with the NH35, but it's also because I do trust the PT5000 now. I like the way it feels on wrist. I like the high beat movement, and I like the price of it. Don't get me wrong, I love the ETA, I love the SEESTERN, but I'm confident that the PT5000 is a relatively good movement. Doesn't mean that we're going to get a good one every single time, but the same with these two as well. So, at the conclusion of my part 2 of the PT5000, I hope that I've given you a little bit more information about this movement, a little bit more interesting facts, and some sort of hands-on practical tests as well. I'd love to hear your experiences with the PT5000. This is an ongoing process, learning about these movements, understanding these movements, and getting a feel for whether I'm comfortable with them or not. So, if you have had a great experience with them, or a particularly bad experience with them, leave me a comment down below. I would love to hear from you. Thank you so much for watching. I always do appreciate you taking the time to listen to me talk and show you one of my passions in my life. Hope to see you in the next video.